Welcome to Paranormal Palace Radio, where truth equals reality, and truth is often stranger than fiction.
Hello everyone, welcome to Paranormal Palace Radio. This is your host, Royce the Redneck Radio Man, and joining me today is going to be Claire Papin, and she has had her time as a radio host on Sirius Radio and a few other networks, and she's actually worked here in Houston at a radio station before. I read about it in her book and in another book that she was in for another author, Catherine Lanigan, but I forget the KTRK, I want to say it was. But she's a contributor to the books Angel Tales, The Art of Manifesting, and When Ego Dies. She's been a columnist for Indigo Sun magazine with her Joyful Earth partnership, articles on ego-friendly living for nearly 6 years. Claire can be heard as a voice of Mother Mary in the world's best-selling book, Made into Audio, Mary's Message to the World by Annie Kirkwood, and is the Marian visionary of Mary's Lullaby, which can be heard on her website at lightitpast.org. She is a pioneer in holistic media and has hosted and produced the radio talk shows It's All Good and Wisdom Today on the Wisdom Network, both of which aired coast to coast on Sirius Satellite Radio. Claire has also locally coordinated relief projects for children, including To Bosnia with Love and Shoes for Orphan Souls, and has spoken for the National Random Acts of Kindness Foundation. And you can go get more information about Claire at www.lightitpast.org. You can also Google her name, Claire Papin, and that'll pull up more information about her, and it'll also take you to her website. And below the chat room, there's a link right below her picture. And I also want to let everybody know we got 2 chat rooms up there today. I just got a chat room integrated with this here script, and I thought I'd let people check out both chats and see which one they like the best. If you get a chance to, just give me opinion. And for those of you that want to call in, we'd love to hear from you. The call-in number is 832-632-7904. And for those of you listening at YouTube or somewhere else, I'd love to have you come join us in chat and talk to us and ask questions in chat. And it's www.paranormalpalace.com. So, Claire, how are you doing today?
I am doing very well, thank you. Just enjoying some beautiful sunshine earlier today, and this time of year we don't normally have that much sunshine. We have a little more snow this time of year, but it was just a gorgeous day, and I'm just really enjoying the weather.
Well, I got to ask you, where are you lucky enough to live at that you get snow?
I'm sorry, say again?
Where are you lucky enough to live at that you get snow?
I'm in Colorado now, northern Colorado.
Ah, well, maybe I ought to move up there, or at least, I don't know, vacation in the winter.
Well, you know, they have some pretty good snow up in the mountains right now. It wouldn't be hard to get in a few trips for skiing if you wanted to.
You wouldn't catch me dead on a pair of skis. Just say, bark, bark, bark.
Well,
about as anxious to do that as I am to parachute.
Well, at least you could sip on some good hot chocolate sitting by a fire.
Yeah, I'd like to go out there and make snow angels.
Mm-hmm.
That and snowball fight.
Yeah, I've done that a few times.
Got to do it once when it snowed back in the 80s. Been a long time since then. But we're here to talk about your newest book. And I believe you informed me, I think it was on the phone before, that this book has been a work in progress for quite some time, hasn't it?
Yes, it has. I actually started it 2 years before it was published. Had things happen in between that slowed down the process, but you know, for a lot of people when they're writing a book, it's a journey in itself. You know, that you're really reliving a lot of things if you're writing true stories about your experiences and loved ones and so forth. So it's a journey in itself, but it's a worthwhile one. And there's a lot of healing that happens when you think you've really worked on things, in your life, and you go back, you revisit those areas and write about them, more levels of healing come in. So it's a well worth journey to take. I would advise it for many people who have things that they really want to share. And most people do have a story to share. And there are things that people get from other people's stories that they would never imagine that would come from that make a difference in other people's lives. So I always try to encourage other people to do that too.
Well, I can definitely understand that. I know me personally, I've thought about writing a book, but my grammar and my spelling, man, for somebody that was a spelling bee in middle school, I done lost over half my spelling skills.
Thank goodness for spell check, at least with me. I mean, there were words I misspelled. I never thought that I would. I was surprised.
Well, I think what happens to me is I'll start writing, and I'm right where I'm at when I start, but my mind gets ahead of my hand, and I forget to write words that were in between.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've noticed that for myself, one of the best methods was to just go ahead and write it and not try to keep correcting along the way. Just let it come and let it flow and, emerge. And then once that's done, you can go back and look over things that you may want to polish up and, make corrections on.
But now, this here book, it kind of chronicles at least a portion or a section of your life, doesn't it?
Oh, yes. Quite a few of the stories are in there are experiences that I actually had. And then there are other people's experiences who shared the journey with me. There's one story in particular that I share at the very beginning of the chapter. It's about Kay and Eduarda Obera. And since I met both of them, I shared my part of the journey with them. But in the beginning, I felt it was real important to offer some background on both of them. Eduarda is Kay's daughter. And when Eduarda was 16 years old, she went into diabetic coma. And she has been in coma ever since. And it's been, 40-something years now.
Wow.
For Eduarda, yes. And her mother stood by her side the entire time when she was in the hospital for, I don't really remember how long she was in the hospital, but at some point her mother, Kay, decided that she would do better if she took her home. She felt if she left her in the hospital, even though she was there by her side every day, she would not survive. She felt she needed to be home, so she brought her home against the advice, of course, of the hospital staff and so forth. In fact, when she brought her home, the insurance policy would no longer cover her. But there were miraculous things that happened around the whole experience that helped Kay to take better care of Eduarda at home than had she remained in the hospital. And also during that time, Kay had experiences with Mother Mary, the Mother of Jesus. And so I share some of those experiences that Kay had during that time, and then leading up to my experience with Kay. When I heard about Kay and Eduarda, I wanted to have Kay on the show so she could tell her story, the show that I was doing. I was doing a radio show at the time. And so I contacted her, and she came on the show, and it was really a beautiful experience because she talked about how the insurmountable power of love really kept things going for them and continued to do so. And during that time, I had a dream about her and Eduarda. So I called her to tell her about the dream. And she said, well, that's interesting because what you just dreamt is what's about to happen in a couple of weeks. Every year we have a big birthday party for Eduarda, and people come from all over. She said last year we had 200 people show up. And mind you, this was several years ago when she and I had this conversation, so I'm not referring to actually 2011 or anything like that. But when she shared this with me, she said, I think you're supposed to be here. And I said, well, in the dream, here's what happened. I dreamt that I was at your house, and there were lots of people there. And they had brought all this food, and I knew that there was some sort of celebration going on. Now, I got to tell you, Royce, this was before she told me about Eduardo's birthday, of course. So I'm telling her about this, and she says, well, I really think you need to be here. If you're going to dream about this stuff before you even know about it, there's something about that. So I thought, well, let me see if I can swing it. And as time got closer to the date of Eduardo's birthday, I felt like, I wasn't able to pull it together. I needed to pull together some more funds for the airline tickets and to take off work and so forth. And so I had to call her and tell her the disappointing news. And she said, well, don't worry about it. I'm sure everything will be fine. And I agreed, hung up, and then I felt, no. I still know I'm supposed to be there. And then I remembered that I had an extra ticket to a round-trip ticket that had been given to me when I was bumped on a flight. It must have been 2 years before that. And I thought, oh my gosh, why didn't I remember this? I could use this. It was I forgot the term that's used for it, but it was a credit that I could use. So I called the airline and I said, I'd like to book a ticket for this date. And they said, oh, we're sorry. The date that you want to fly out is during spring break, and we're not allowed to use those kinds of tickets during that time. And I thought, oh gosh, what a disappointment now. Another disappointment. So I hung up the phone, and then I thought, wait a minute, I'm not giving up. So I picked up the phone again. I called and I said, look, let me just tell you, I really want to try to make this birthday celebration. And I explained to them who Eduarda is and why it was so important for me to be there, because I just felt like there must have been some reason, that all of this came about. And she said, well, let me tell you how you can do it. And she talked to me about doing standby and how I would still be able to get on the plane as long as, there was an open seat, and it happened. I was able to get on the plane. I arrived just in time to be a part of the birthday song for Eduarda, and I got to meet the author of the book about Eduarda, which is called A Promise is a Promise, and the author is Dr. Wayne Dyer, and we shared our common love and passion for Kay and Eduarda and all that they've been through. And anyway, long story short with this whole thing, I had some experiences with Mother Mary while I was there as well. And so Kay and I were able to share with each other, about our journeys with this more what some people might consider to be unusual type of experience in life. And I felt that being in the presence of Eduarda was something that helped me to grow in my own personal experience as well. To witness a young woman who has been in a coma that long and still thriving and still being very much a part of the world, but just from, you might say, even a different dimension. And I talk about that as well in the story. But that is one of the stories that I share that touches me deeply because of all of the components in there and the way it can be inspiring for other people when they hear about someone else's challenges and how they still thrive even within a challenge that has lasted that long in their life.
Yeah, but, she's not the only one that you mentioned in the book that had a really big challenge, and one of them had a lot happier ending right here in Houston. I bet you can think of the one I'm talking about.
I think you may be talking about Steve.
Yes, I am.
Oh, yes. Well, do you want me to share that story?
Sure.
Okay, I'd be happy to. Well, this was at a time where I was just getting ready to start a new job in radio. It was going to be my first real experience in radio. And I was going to be doing news, traffic, and weather on the air for, actually I was going to be doing traffic for KTRH. You mentioned that in your intro. And that's the station I was doing traffic for at the time. I did news and weather for other stations. But anyway, here's how this started off. The night before I was about to start this new job, I had a dream that I was driving around the freeways of Los Angeles, and I ended up at this beautiful sandy beach. And there were all these people there romping and having fun, and they were in their beach attire. And I was there in business attire. I mean, I was wearing, a business dress and, shoes and so forth. But I was standing on the sand and walking toward the shoreline, and all the people that were around me, it was as if they didn't even see me. And when I got to the edge of the water, I had a thought. And I looked down at my hand, and in my right hand, I saw what was a miraculous medal. And I'll explain what a miraculous medal is in a moment. But this is what happened next. As I saw the medal in my hand, I thought, I don't know if it'll reach, but I've got to try. And what I was referring to in my thought was, I don't know if it'll make it into the water, but somehow I knew I needed to throw it into the ocean. And so I reached my hand back as far as I could and moved my hand forward with all my might and released it into the air. And it went into the water, and then there was all this light, and I could feel all this vibration through my body as well. And I knew something wonderful was happening. I just didn't know what. Well, when I woke up from the dream, I thought to myself, man, that was amazing. I wonder what that was all about. And I, it really kind of haunted me, throughout the day. But I knew I also needed to get started and get my day going because I had to be on the air for the first time for that station. So I got dressed, and there was still plenty of time left over for me to stop by my mother's house on the way. And when I showed up, she said, Claire, listen, I've got something for you. I found something on the floor in a used bookstore, and I knew I needed to give it to you. So she says, reach out your hand, and she put it in my right hand, and it was a miraculous medal. Now, I got to tell you, Royce, we're not Catholic. So she didn't know what a miraculous medal was. And I knew what one was because I had met someone previously, months before that had told me about miraculous medals and the story of it and so forth. So I already knew what one was. And I looked at it and I went, my gosh, Mom, I just had a dream last night about a miraculous medal in this hand. I said, this is wonderful that you've given it to me. Thank you. And I'll have to explain more later, but I've got to be on my way. So I headed out the door, and, she's a real sweet woman, my mother. She hands me a snack for later and gives me a kiss on the cheek. And I'm very grateful to have my mother in my life. She's a wonderful woman.
Kind of bumps you out the door, gets you for the day.
Exactly, as if I was on my way to my first day at school or something.
Yeah.
It was really cute. So I show up at the studio, and there is this real sweet man there in the room. He's sitting in a wheelchair, and the microphone is in front of him, and he's just finishing up his news report on the air. And he turns around and looks at me, and he says, oh, you must be Claire, as soon as he's done with his report, obviously. And I said, yes, I am, because he was, of course, expecting me to show up because I was taking over the shift. And he says, well, I'm Steve. Nice to meet you. And while he's saying his name, there's this thought that shoots through my head that says, so how long do you think you're going to be in that wheelchair? And I was shocked to hear this thought in my head. I did not feel that it came from me. I wouldn't have thought that. That was not even the first thing on my mind when I saw him in the chair. But that's what came through my mind as he was introducing himself. And now by this time in my life, I have had a lot of interesting things happen. So rather than being, excusing myself and splashing myself with cold water to try to figure out what's going on, I just kind of went with it. I said to him, look, yes, it's nice to meet you too, and I'm good to be here. And then he looked at me and he said, oh, you mean this? And I thought to myself, my gosh, he heard that thought, and I know I didn't say it out loud. He was pointing to his wheelchair. And I said, so I knew, go with it, Claire. Don't try to ask him, well, whatever do you mean? So I said, yes, that, referring to the wheelchair that the thought talked about. And he said, well, the doctor told him that he was going to be in the chair the rest of his life now, that there was nothing more that could be done. And he said the hard part was to learn how to emotionally adjust to it. And I felt my heart just open wide, and I just felt like there has to be something for him. And again, I have to say that the last thing I would want to do is step into someone's business and say, oh, no, that's not your path. Your path is this. You're not supposed to be in that chair anymore. I wouldn't want to do something like that to someone when I have nothing to found it on, or anything. So I just said, here's what I know. There's so much that can be done to help someone's health. You never know when that can be something that can improve a condition. And I said, besides that, I believe in miracles. And, this was like something that was coming from a whole other place when I'm speaking with him. And I just, again, had to just flow with it. So he looks at me like, wow, that's interesting that you're, opening up and sharing this with me. And he was intrigued, and he stayed glued to every word I said. And I said, listen, I believe in miracles, and let me tell you a story about a miracle. Now, here's what I did, Royce. I shared with him about how I had the dream the night before and what happened with the miraculous medal when I showed up at my mom's house. And then I said to him, do you know the story of the miraculous medal? Do you know what the history is? And he said, no. And I said, well, here it is. I think it was about 1830, in the year 1830, in France. Mother Mary, the mother of Jesus, appeared to a young woman named Catherine Labouré. And she asked Catherine to strike a medal of the vision she was showing her and get the medal out to the people soon, because there were going to be some great challenges there in Europe. And this was a gift for the people. And so Catherine, it was not an easy journey at first. She had to finally convince someone to help her. It turned out to be a priest who helped her to get medals struck of the vision and got those medals out to the people shortly after that. And then it wasn't long after that the bubonic plague hit Europe. And those medals spread far and wide as well. So this is historic. Everyone who got the medal did not contract the plague. And everyone who got the plague but later got the medal did not perish from the plague. And that's what some of the history reports of this time. Well, what I know about this is that Mary has not asked people to believe in a physical object and put their faith in that, but that the miraculous medal represents a symbol of a prayer. And so we're talking energy here, more so than a physical object. It goes way beyond a physical object. So I share this story with Steve, and he looks at me, and by this time he has tears rolling down his face. And he said, "It's so good to know that someone cares to even share like this." And I said, we all care. Everyone cares. Some of us have forgotten about the care, and it gets covered up with the forgetfulness. But it's still there, even underneath layers and layers of forgetfulness. It's still there. It never goes away. I gave him a miraculous medal. I put it in his hand, and I said a very short, quiet prayer for him. And this was a prayer that I didn't even let him know I was doing. God bless this man and help him to heal in any way that you would have him heal. Very quickly, very silently, I did this. Well, we ended up, we had just met moments before, and now we felt like we'd known each other all our lives by this point, and we gave each other a hug, and then I had to go on the air. So
nice timing.
Yes, exactly. So, and what's really interesting too is, that morning I was a little nervous about my first day on the job, and with everything that happened when I first showed up at the studio, I had completely forgotten that I was ever nervous. I went on the air with no problem. But then here's the rest of the story. I get invited by a friend of mine who is a minister who helps the homeless. And I had worked with him in the past, whenever we would go and serve food and so forth, helping people. When he would have services at his church, and we would offer food to them. And so he tells me that he needs to go to Los Angeles so that he can talk to a film producer about a story that he wants to make a film about regarding this minister's work. And he said, I think you should come with us, because there were a couple of other people that I knew that were going too. He said, you might be of some help. And I said, I just started this new job. I don't think I can get the time off from work. And then also, I don't even get paid, for a couple of more weeks. I don't know if I can, pull it together to go. And he says, well, we have an extra frequent flyer ticket. So I said, okay, all right.
Another one of those.
I know, it's another one. So as it turned out, I wasn't even on the schedule until after they were going to return. So it just worked out perfectly on the timing. I went with them, and it just so happened that one of the meetings that they were going to have was going to be in Malibu, not in the heart of Los Angeles. And Malibu is mostly cliffs. If any of the people who are listening now, any of you have been to Malibu, you know what I'm talking about. There's a restaurant there called the Sand Castle. Now, since then, unfortunately, it has burned down. I don't know if it has been rebuilt, but this is the restaurant that was there. So I go to this meeting with them, and I have a miraculous medal with me. And I noticed that there's this small strip of a sandy beach there. And I thought, wow, that's interesting. I wasn't even expecting there to be a beach here in Malibu. So I excused myself and I went out there. And then I remembered in the dream that I had, I was in business attire, standing in the sand, while all these people were romping and having fun. Now, the lady who seated us, who pointed out the back door for me to go out onto the beach, said to me, it's really strange. This time of year, we're not used to seeing this many people out there on the beach. This is very unusual. I thought, well, it's still, the whole picture still fit the dream that I had. I walked to the shoreline. The exact same thought came to me. I don't know if it'll reach, and I realized why. And that is because if I had gotten any closer where I could get the metal into the ocean a little easier, my feet would have been completely soaked by the ebb and flow of the water. I had to stay back just far enough without getting completely soaked. So I thought, well, I've got to try anyway. And I threw the metal just as hard as I could. And a big wave came and snatched it up, pulled it into the ocean, and then I felt all this electricity shooting through my body. And I thought, man, this is just like the dream. Something wonderful is happening, but I don't know what. Well, I'm gonna cut to the chase here, Royce, because it's already a long enough story. When I returned to Houston and I returned to work, it just so happened that it was on the same day again that Steve was on the shift before me. And when I walked into the room, Steve was on the air, but he was no longer in the chair. He was no longer in a wheelchair. And when we spoke, I said, what happened? What was the wheelchair? And he said, I just got so mad at that chair, I just decided I was going to get out and walk. And I did. And I thought, well, this is amazing. Steve, this is amazing. And he said to me, who are you? Ever since I met you, my life has changed. And I said, you know what? I am you. We are all connected. And the truth is, you decided that you wanted to get out of that chair and walked. And you took a mustard seed of faith and hope. And you decided to do it, and you did. You're the one who really stood up and took charge of this. And he's been walking ever since. Now, he does use a cane from time to time. But he doesn't have to carry on in a way that he never envisioned himself that in the first place. So that's the story of Steve.
So you're still in touch with him then?
We stayed in touch for a very long time. And, since I moved away and he moved to another station and we were no longer at the same place, eventually it's just been, it's been several years now since we've been in touch.
Right. Now, I was wondering, I think I remember reading actually, didn't you say that the Mother Mary told you would be writing a book?
I knew at some point that I might be sharing these stories one day, but it wasn't until recent time, like just before I started writing the book, that I was asked by Mary to write the book. And it came more in a telepathic form. My experience of her, I always know her presence when it's very strong with me, when it shows up. It's almost like a signature vibration, you could say. And so the request came. And then I thought, well, let me just see how to do this. I'm not really sure how to do this. And so, and you're not always handed on a silver platter, everything, from A to Z. A lot of what we do here in our human experience helps us to learn and grow and evolve. And none of those opportunities are going to be taken away from us. So what I found was I had to do some of my own soul searching on how to even begin sharing these stories.
Which is also, equates into your own personal growth.
Exactly. And again, they're not ever going to take that opportunity away from you to do that. And certainly there was a lot of growth when I started writing these stories. Well, then there was a big delay. I was distracted by life. There was a lot going on. My niece was here living with me and finishing up high school, and I was playing soccer mom with her, taking her to tennis practice and doing lots of things, and I always found myself quite distracted. And my husband actually came to me and said, I don't know where this is coming from, but I'm supposed to ask you, when are you going to finish that book? And I thought that was pretty funny because, obviously I wasn't tuning in and paying attention.
I've had that happen.
Yeah, it happens a lot with me sometimes. So anyways, I finally did hunker down and really pour myself into it. And anyway, I don't want to bore you with the details, but that was how it started out.
Okay. Well, I was also going to mention, why is it the stories and experiences you share in your book are so timely for people to hear?
Very good question. There's a lot of change going on in the world right now. And I think, Royce, you would probably agree. There's a lot going on with the weather that's changing. It's affecting people in many ways. Just from the experience of the people on the East Coast with Hurricane Sandy, says a lot. It says a lot about the times we live in and the things that are happening. And not just climate-wise. There are other types of changes going on as well. Economic challenges that many people have been going through, and political unrest, and a lot of things have been heating up in the Middle East. There's just a lot going on, and there are a lot of concerns about a lot of the change that's happening.
Especially with 2012 coming up.
Well, you're referring possibly to the end of December 21st. This is a time that many people have been talking about. I know I get daily influx of emails and shows on TV about it and so forth. People, there are a wide gambit of theories and thoughts about it. What's going to happen on or around that date. And I'm not gonna say that I know exactly what is going to happen around that date, but I can share my own perception. And it's just a perception. This is not factual, and this is nothing that has been said to me by any unseen, angels or Mother Mary or anything like this. My sense is that what is really going on here is we're moving into greater awareness. Our consciousness as a whole, humanity, is shifting, and it's shifting to a greater good. And at the same time, while this is happening, we are also experiencing a lot of unrest, a lot of challenges, a lot of great change that we're going through. And so I think that in some cases we're feeling, some of the pressure from, the uncertainty of change. At the same time, we're also, many of us, without even knowing how to even put it into words, are feeling another change happening, this is internal for a lot of us. And so we're going to continue to see our climate shift and change, and that also affects the stability of, many of the places that are more earthquake-prone and so forth. We'll continue to see these types of things shift and change. But we're also waking up at the same time. And so it's during this time where there's this, it's almost a polarity in a way that's happening. Many people are wanting to hear more about the things that really matter to them, things that inspire them, things that encourage hope and encourage the promise of good things coming out of some of the challenges that are happening. And that's why I felt a responsibility to share the stories that I have shared in the book. And when I asked Mother Mary why she would have me share these stories when she was asking me to write the book, she said, for spiritual nourishment. And that's really what's happening when we do get a sense of hope. Our inner world begins to feel nourished from a spiritual perspective. And And this is the type of thing that helps people to take action in their lives rather than sitting back and waiting for something to happen. They step up to the plate and they say, you know, I feel like I have a part in this great shift that's happening, and I'm going to contribute my energy in whatever way I can. And some people already know what those ways are, and some people are still waking up to what those things are. But each of us has a story to share, and each of us has a contribution to make to this new shift that's happening.
That is definitely a very good point. Now, I was going to say, most people associate visitations from Mother Mary, the Mother of Jesus, with people who have a Catholic background, but you say that you are not a Catholic and were not raised in any religion, which you and me, I think, would both admit is something that's kind of hard to figure out how you would be chosen, wouldn't you think?
Well, you know, actually, you've asked two questions within one, and you used the word chosen. You know, I'm not so sure I would use the word chosen, unless we use it for every single person on the planet. Do you see where I'm coming from here? Yeah, we're all chosen. We all have chosen to be here and to be a part of the life experience that we're having and this amazing, auspicious time that we're in on the planet. We've all chosen that. And also, you know, there are some people, and I would have to say there are many people that I have met that have also had experiences with Mother Mary. I would venture to say it's more frequent than most people would even imagine. If you and you know, not everybody will talk about their experience. For some people, it's a very close and personal experience that they have had, and they don't always know how to articulate it, or they'll share it with people that they feel comfortable with, but may not go beyond that. There have been many, many people who have had experiences with Mother Mary, and in my journey, not having been Catholic, but having these experiences, you know, I have to say, like most children growing up, when we think of Mother Mary, we associate Mother Mary with Jesus, and in a non-Catholic setting, that's really, you know, you don't really carry it any further than that. You just say, well, you know, I have heard that it's Mother Mary who brought Jesus into the world, of course, you know, and the story that goes with Jesus' birth. And but we don't know a lot more about Mary, those of us who have not been raised in a traditional religion that puts emphasis on her. And so it was surprising to me in a way, too, when I began to have these experiences with her. But I also began to realize in the very beginning, well, the truth is that when Mary's experience on the planet happened, she wasn't Catholic either. And it really isn't about the religion that you're in, because now, in recent times, Mary has come to people of all walks of life. It's not really about religion. So it's more universal. And there have even been people who had no spiritual belief at all, who have had experiences with Mary. So I think it's really a much bigger picture, you know, than one person's story.
Well, I think you're probably right, especially since there's so many people on the planet.
Yes, yes. Have you heard about some of the experiences in Egypt over the years? People of all faiths would go to, and I believe it was a Coptic church where Mary had been sighted floating just above this church. And people, hundreds of thousands of people would gather. And many of them, would film it, with their video cameras. And if you Google, Blessed Mother or Mother Mary, all of the different terms that are used for Mother Mary, Virgin Mary, there's just so many different ones. If you Google to find video, there's videos, there's still shots. I mean, there's just a plethora of information out there about the different sightings and the different people who have had encounters with her. It's phenomenal.
I would imagine if I had had an encounter, I would probably find it to be that way. I don't know what I would think because I never had the experience. What can people do to connect to their own inner guidance?
Well, I talk about this in the book too, the importance of connecting with your own inner guidance. And not necessarily, you don't necessarily have to make it about Mother Mary or an angel or an ascended master, or, you don't have to make it about a specific being that you connect with for guidance, although they are available for that. And you can call upon them for help and support when you feel that that's really needed in your life. The way that they come through may not always be the way that you expect. And you may have an experience with them and not even identify it with them. But the important thing is that something shifted for you, and it shifted in a positive way. And you may not have even known it came from your guardian angel or Mary or another being. And as far as connecting with your own inner guidance, and this is the part of you that is, it's like connecting with your higher self, the part of yourself that is the direct connection to God and the source of all that is. This is the place where you would get your own direct guidance. And I had to do that many times in my life. And Royce, I don't know if you remember when Hurricane Rita was heading toward Houston.
Oh, yes, I do.
That? Okay. So the very last story in the book, the last chapter, I talk about that experience. And I talk about, in this case, I tuned into my own guidance. And I asked, as this hurricane was coming closer and closer, and for those who don't know, I'll say this. Hurricane Rita happened just a little 2 weeks past Hurricane Katrina. And so people were still very nervous and raw from the experience of Hurricane Katrina by the time Hurricane Rita showed up. And Hurricane Rita was even larger than Hurricane Katrina. But a lot of people don't know that. Well, when Hurricane Rita was in the middle of the Gulf and heading toward Houston, of course I was still living there at the time, the storm kept growing and growing, and I checked in. I went into meditation, and I simply asked. And I was really centering myself in my heart. And I said, is this storm really going to hit Houston? And if so, do we need to evacuate? My husband and I and our cat. And the answer I got was this: you will be safe. And this felt like a very powerful message that came from a divine source, and it felt like it was my own inner guidance speaking to me this time. And so what I did was I trusted this with all of my heart. I trusted it. And I shared that with my husband. And, as the storm continued to get bigger and bigger, he finally came to me and he said, "Are you sure?" And I said, I'm going to stand by this. I went within my heart. I asked about this, and this is what I heard. So I'm going to stand by this. But I will also say that if you feel that we need to evacuate and you would feel better doing that, that's fine. We will be safe either way. So here's what happened. He went and did his own meditation and prayer. He got the same message pretty much. And he said, okay, we're going to stay. And it's a good thing we already had our preparedness kit put together. But long story short with this whole thing, there are people who would say to me, oh, but, I don't get messages like you. That won't work for me. What am I supposed to do about something like that? And I would encourage you to, even if you don't think that you get messages, I would encourage you to take time to have a quiet space and go within and just visualize yourself, centering yourself in your heart. And if there's something that you really feel you need to know, you can ask that question while you're centered in your heart. And if you don't get any pictures and you don't hear any inaudible locution type messages or anything coming to you, trust and know that it will show up in one form or another. And it may not even be in a way that you recognize, but you just end up having a better outcome in the long run. And this is how I share this with people. I say you've got to at least give yourself that heart-centered space where you go within and you share what's on your heart and mind, or you ask your question and then you leave it there until something opens up where all of a sudden you get this light bulb that goes off that gives you an idea. Well, as it turned out, this storm that was heading toward Houston, we got the clean side of the storm. It did hit Houston, and but there was no major flooding. There was a lot of wind damage, but we indeed were safe. And there were many people. I think it was about 3.4 million people who did evacuate. And some of those people had some pretty challenging experiences on the road trying to evacuate. It took nearly 48 hours for the freeways to finally clear out because it was at standstill for the entire first 24 hours. And there were a lot of challenges for people, running out of gas, cars overheating because temperatures were at 100 that day, and the humidity made it feel even hotter.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you remember that.
Oh, God, I can't forget it because everybody online, oh, Royce, you need to get out of there. That hurricane's going to come through there. And I'm like, I'm not going nowhere.
Right.
I never had a question because, mine was more logical. I live in a, close to downtown, just north of it. There's seldom ever any tornadoes comes right through and this little subdivision we're in, and most of the high winds are blocked by two-story houses around us. And this house was built back in the 40s when they were still sturdy, and I had every reason to believe that it wasn't going to be that bad on us.
Yes, and it did turn out well for you, right?
Oh, yeah. The only thing was we got our lights knocked out, and we ended up going to stay with Jeanette afterwards, but that was after the traffic cleared, too.
Yes. Well, yeah, our electricity went out for about, I'd say, 5 hours, and then it came back on before the end of the day. And I heard so many wonderful stories that came out of that as well from other people. The kindness of strangers that just, showing up on the freeways while people were at a standstill on the road trying to evacuate. Some of these people have been in their cars sitting for, 18 hours. And they'd run out of water, they didn't have food, and there were people that went on foot to bring food to people in cars. Food
yeah, now you wrote about that in your book.
I did, yes. Yeah. There was a lot of good that sometimes change and challenge births a lot of higher evolution experiences. And certainly a lot of that did happen. Now, I know that there were also some stories that were not as pleasant as well that came out of the evacuation experience that people had. But the ones that really stand through the test of time are the ones where the kindness of strangers really shows up. And, miraculous things happen to a lot of people who had some stories to share from that too. And, there were a lot of very frightened people because, again, just 2.5 weeks before that was Hurricane Katrina. So that was still very fresh on a lot of people's minds.
Yeah, it really was. It was still fresh on my mind, I can guarantee you that. Then Ike was still I think Ike was the next storm, wasn't it?
It was. I had already moved to Colorado by that time. But, I had heard that there was a lot more that happened from that storm in Houston and surrounding areas. And then, of course, Ike, headed straight up north and dumped massive floods on states north of Texas as well. I remember that.
Okay. Now, I wanted to ask you, because we're getting kind of close, and before we do this, I wanted to also mention to everybody once again that her website is, let's go back down here, www.lightpaths.org /book.php will take you right to her book. You can scroll down and look under the show description right under her picture and the book cover there, and there's a link right to her site. And Claire, is your book available at, Amazon yet?
Yes, it's on Amazon, Amazon.com, as well as Borders books as well, online. And Barnes & Noble. It's going to be up on Barnes & Noble by tomorrow. It's available as an ebook as well as a paperback, so you'd be able to have it in either form. So there's about 6 different retailers. I think Sony is also carrying it, so Google, iBooks, and so forth. So there's different options available. And if it's easier to go to my website, lightedpaths.org, and click on the link of one of the retailers, that's another way to do it too. So, and the title of the book is Mary's Miracles and Messages, A True Story of a Visionary's Journey. So it can always be Googled if you're not able to find it any other way.
Okay, now, I think I just said something really downright silly, because down at the bottom of your description I have on the show page here is a link to Amazon to your book, and I asked you if it was on Amazon. Okay, I don't know where my mind was at. I might have to go look for it as soon as the show's over. But we got that resolved. Y'all can link to it here. And also, when I get it in the archive, here on this site and on my other show site, Talk Now Radio, it'll be on the both those underneath the description in the archives. Now, when I do it at YouTube and Media Cafe, they don't allow me to put Amazon links up at those, but I'll get a short description with a link to her site and my site up over there. Needed to ask you, was there anything that I haven't covered that you'd like to get covered?
There is one message that Mary shared with me that I would like to offer here, and that is, for people who are feeling anxiety or stressed about a lot of the big change that is happening, I would like to share that one of the messages Mary offers is, where there is hope, there is action. And what I understand from this is, for people who feel hopeless, that there is no hope for good things to happen for them, whether it's in their personal life or whether this is planetary, whatever scale we're talking about, if they go into a hopeless place, then the other thing that happens is they take no action in making anything change or in lifting themselves out of whatever low space that they may have dropped into. She encourages people to remember to have hope for anything that is happening in your life. And from that hope, we then step into a place where we start taking action to be a part of. It's sort of co-creating with the universe things that you want to create in your life. And even if that means, to lift yourself out of depression, or if it means to move to a place where you didn't think you'd ever be able to get to, or that things will happen better in the world. There's just so many directions you can take that, but I just would ask you to remember this one message: where there is hope, there is action. And keep that in your heart and mind. Let that go with you through the rest of your life journey too, because it might support you through the process.
Also, talking to other people and being a part of a group can help too, can it?
Oh, yes. Well, giving yourself an opportunity to lift some of those things off your chest or off your heart and mind that you may feel more community with other people if you give yourself an opportunity to share and not hold it in and not feel that you have to carry whatever burden is with you alone, because we're very much loved, not only by the unseen forces, but humanity as a whole is, it's part of our nature to have community and to reach out to others and to be there for others when someone needs to have support in their life. That's part of our nature.
Yeah, I think that would be, because most everybody I know, when they have this, problems in their life, they want to go to somebody they know, somebody who they think can relate, who's been there before, and, talk to them, in other words.
Yes. Yeah, and, when we do this kind of thing, when we do reach out, it may not always happen at first that we begin to see an inner shift in ourselves, and if we just give it some time, it begins to emerge, and then we feel and see a new energy within ourselves, and sometimes that's all the lift we need to take things to the next step and to the next level. I remember one time I was going through a major challenge in my life, and the message that came to me was, take each step as it lights up before you. Because I felt like I was in a fog. I felt like I couldn't see anything in front of me. I didn't know which way to go. I didn't know what to do. And right at that moment when I got that message, I saw a step light up in front of me. And so I stepped on to that step. And then I realized there was going to be another step that was going to light up if I would just be patient and allow the next step to light up. And it did. And so this is something that gets me through some of the hard times as well. Take each step as it lights up before you. And this is metaphorical. It can light up in different ways. It can light up as an email that you get from someone that offers an idea that you may not have thought of, or a phone call, or an idea that just shows up in a dream. There's lots of things that show up in people's dreams. So speaking of dreams, continue to dream the world you want to create, because many of us have the power to be a part of this great change and create a world that we know would be one we really want to live and thrive in.
Exactly. And don't be afraid to dream the impossible dream. If you can't dream it, you can't have it.
Well, certainly we dream in different ways. So, that's a good step to take, is to dream it and know that you're not alone. There are many, many unseen forces who are supporting us and love us very much.
Okay. Well, I was going to say we just slipped over 9 o'clock here, and I wasn't going to try to rush this thing off, but what you probably have not been aware of is my web host, I guess, because the spammers or something, has shut me down twice on my website, not my show, just the site, twice during the show. Once they disabled my index PHP, and the other time they changed the permission, because the first time I just undisabled it while you were talking, and then the second time I went to, change the permissions back, and it wouldn't let me, so I re-uploaded a different index PHP, and it was back. But I was going to say I don't know how long this is going to last before they do something else. Maybe we ought to call it a night before my site's back down again. And I wanted to thank you for coming to the show. This is my first time to have you here, and goodness knows you've helped me get a lot of guests over the years. You've been a good friend of mine over the years, and it's certainly been a pleasure to finally get to interview you, and I hope to have a lot of future interviews.
Thank you, Royce. It's really been a pleasure. I have listened to many of your shows, and I feel that you make a major contribution to helping people to become more informed and aware of some of the things that we may not hear so much about in some of the more mainstream areas. So you're doing a great service, and I want to thank you as well for all the good that you're doing.
Okay, well, you do a lot yourself, believe me. I mean, what was it, the Galactic Federation? You did a lot for them, for the other radio shows that you've been on, and the Mother Mary work you've done. Goodness knows you've done quite a lot.
Yeah, and a lot more work to be done for all of us, too. We're kind of midwives right now for a lot of the good that's still moving in, so we just got to keep ourselves aware and ready to go, ready to move with the flow of this.
And as they say, keep on keeping on.
That's right.
So, you have a good night. I wouldn't say weekend quite yet. It's not quite there. Enjoy what's left of the week. I hope you enjoy your Christmas. And as usual, we got each other's contact info. Let's not lose touch.
Oh, absolutely not. This is just the beginning.
Okay, that sounds fantastic.
I've got some more people I want to send to you, too.
Oh, great. That works just great. I'm going to get on the horn with my host tomorrow morning and try to snatch his teeth through the phone and find out why he did that to my site before it happens again.
All right. Well, you have a lovely evening, and thank you so much for inviting me to be on.
And thank you for being on. And we'll talk at you later.
Okay. Take care.
You too now. Bye-bye. Okay, everybody. Pardon me. That hit me kind of suddenly. Let's, real quick, let everybody know that this Saturday my guest is going to be Bob Curran at 1 p.m. We're going to be discussing two of his newest books, The Haunted Mind of H.P. Lovecraft and American Vampires. Hopefully y'all want to be here live and maybe ask some questions in chat and interact. And hopefully I'll have my website problem straightened out by then. In the meantime, y'all have a good weekend, and I'll talk at you later.
It slowed down the process, but for a lot of people when they're writing a book, it's a journey in itself. You're really reliving a lot of things if you're writing true stories about your experiences and loved ones and so forth. So it's a journey in itself, but it's a worthwhile one. And there's a lot of healing that happens, when you think you've really worked on things, in your life, and you go back, you revisit those areas and write about them, more levels of healing come in. So it's a well worth journey to take. I would advise it for many people who have things that they really want to share. And most people do have a story to share. And there are things that people get from other people's stories that they would never imagine that would come from that, make a difference in other people's lives. So I always try to encourage other people to do that too.
Well, I can definitely understand that. I know me personally, I've thought about writing a book, but my grammar and my spelling, man, for somebody that was a spelling bee in middle school, I done lost over half my spelling skills.
Thank goodness for spell check. At least with me. I mean, there were words I misspelled I never thought that I would. I was surprised.
Well, I think what happens to me is I'll start writing, and I'm right where I'm at when I start, but my mind gets ahead of my hand, and I forget to write words that were in between.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've noticed that for myself, one of the best methods was just go ahead and write it and not try to keep correcting along the way. Just let it come and let it flow and, emerge. And then once that's done, you can go back and look over things that you may want to polish up and, make corrections on.
But now, this here book, it kind of chronicles at least a portion or a section of your life, doesn't it?
Oh, yes. Quite a few of the stories are in there are experiences that I actually had. And then there are others came on the show, and it was really a beautiful experience because she talked about how the insurmountable power of love really kept things going for them and continued to do so. And during that time, I had a dream about her and Eduarda. So I called her to tell her about the dream. And she said, well, that's interesting because what you just dreamt is what's about to happen in a couple of weeks. Every year we have a big birthday party for Eduarda. And people come from all over. She said last year we had 200 people show up. And mind you, this was several years ago when she and I had this conversation, so I'm not referring to actually 2011 or anything like that. But when she shared this with me, she said, I think you're supposed to be here. And I said, well, in the dream, here's what happened. I dreamt that I was at your house, and there were lots of people there. And they had brought all this food, and I knew that there was some sort of celebration going on. Now, I got to tell you, Royce, this was before she told me about Eduarda's birthday, of course. So I'm telling her about this, and she says, well, I really think you need to be here. If you're going to dream about this stuff before you even know about it, there's something about that. So I thought, well, let me see if I can swing it. And as time got closer to the date of Eduarda's birthday, I felt like, I wasn't able to pull it together. I needed to pull together some more funds for the airline tickets and to take off work and so forth. And so I had to call her and tell her the disappointing news. And she said, well, don't worry about it. I'm sure everything will be fine. And I agreed, hung up, and then I felt, no. I still know I'm supposed to be there. And then I remembered that I had an extra ticket to a round-trip ticket that had been given to me when I was bumped on a flight. It must have been 2 years before that. And I thought, oh, my gosh, why didn't I read people's experiences who shared the journey with me? There's one story in particular that I share at the very beginning of the chapter. It's about Kay and Eduarda Obera. And since I met both of them, I shared my part of the journey with them. But in the beginning, I felt it was real important to offer some background on both of them. Eduarda is Kay's daughter. And when Eduarda was 16 years old, she went into diabetic coma. And she has been in coma ever since. And it's been, 40-something years now.
Wow.
For Eduarda, yes. And her mother stood by her side the entire time when she was in the hospital for, I don't really remember how long she was in the hospital, but at some point her mother, Kay, decided that she would do better if she took her home. She felt if she left her in the hospital, even though she was there by her side every day, she would not survive. She felt she needed to be home, so she brought her home against the advice, of course, of the hospital staff and so forth. In fact, when she brought her home, the insurance policy would no longer cover her. But there were miraculous things that happened around the whole experience that helped Kay to take better care of Eduarda at home than had she remained in the hospital. And also during that time, Kay had experiences with Mother Mary, the Mother of Jesus. And so I share some of those experiences that Kay had during that time, and then leading up to my experience with Kay. When I heard about Kay, and Eduarda, I wanted to have Kay on the show so she could tell her story. The show that I was doing a radio show at the time, and so I contacted her, and she.
Welcome to Paranormal Palace Radio, where truth equals reality, and truth is often stranger than fiction.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Paranormal Palace Radio. This is your host, Royce the Redneck Radio Man. And joining me today is going to be Claire Papin. And she has had her time as a radio host on Sirius Radio and a few other networks. And she's actually worked here in Houston at a radio station before. I read about it in her book and in another book that she was in for another author, Catherine Lanigan. But I forget the KTRK, I want to say it was. But she's a contributor to the books Angel Tales, The Art of Manifesting, and When Ego Dies. She's been a columnist for Indigo Sun magazine with her Joyful Earth partnership, articles on ego-friendly living for nearly 6 years. Claire can be heard as a voice of Mother Mary in the world's best-selling book, made into audio, Mary's Message to the World by Annie Kirkwood, and is the Marian visionary of Mary's Lullaby, which can be heard on her website at lightitpast.org. She is a pioneer in holistic media and has hosted and produced the radio talk shows It's All Good and Wisdom Today on the Wisdom Network, both of which aired coast to coast on Sirius Satellite Radio. Claire has also locally coordinated relief projects for children, including To Bosnia with Love and Shoes for Orphan Souls, and has spoken for the National Random Acts of Kindness Foundation. And you can go get more information about Claire at www.lightitpast.org. You can also Google her name, Claire Papin, and that'll pull up more information about her, and it'll also take you to her website. And below the chat room, there's a link right below her picture. And I also want to let everybody know we got 2 chat rooms up there today. I just got a chat room integrated with this here script, and I thought I'd let people check out both chats and see which one they like the best. If you get a chance to, just give me opinion. And for those of you that want to call in, we'd love to hear from you. The call-in number is 832-632-7904. And for those of you listening at YouTube or somewhere else, I'd love to have you come join us in chat and talk to us and ask questions in chat. And it's www.paranormalpalace.com. So, Claire, how are you doing today?
I am doing very well, thank you. Just enjoying some beautiful sunshine earlier today, and this time of year we don't normally have that much sunshine. We have a little more snow this time of year, but it was just a gorgeous day, and I'm just really enjoying the weather.
Well, I got to ask you, where are you lucky enough to live at that you get snow?
I'm sorry, say again?
Where are you lucky enough to live at that you get snow?
I'm in Colorado now, northern Colorado.
Ah, well, maybe I ought to move up there, or at least, I don't know, vacation in the winter.
Well, you know, they have some pretty good snow up in the mountains right now. It wouldn't be hard to get in a few trips for skiing if you wanted to.
You wouldn't catch me dead on a pair of skis. Just say, bark, bark, bark.
Well,
about as anxious to do that as I am to parachute.
Well, at least you could sip on some good hot chocolate sitting by a fire.
Yeah, I'd like to go out there and make snow angels.
Mm-hmm.
That and snowball fight.
Yeah, I've done that a few times.
Got to do it once when it snowed back in the 80s. Been a long time since then. But we're here to talk about your newest book. And I believe you informed me, I think it was on the phone before, that this book has been a work in progress for quite some time, hasn't it?
Yes, it has. I actually started it 2 years before it was published. Had things happen in between.